What happens to the software industry if we don't hire junior engineers? There's no denying it that the industry today is really rough. If you're graduating from college or have just a year or so of experience under your belt and you're trying to find a new job, or God forbid, I feel for you if you are a boot camp grad recently, things are really, really rough. This seems to be the direction that everything is headed, at least in the current moment. And what tech executives like to say is it's all because of AI. Just a few days ago, as of this recording, Andy Jassy, the CEO at Amazon, said that they're going to be continuing to reduce headcount, and that probably means layoffs because of AI. They're saying that AI at Amazon is going to replace engineers, people in middle management, doing support, all kinds of things. So this begs the question for me of what happens if we don't hire junior engineers into the industry. Sure, seniors and mid-level people can continue to be extremely productive with these tools, but what happens to the industry at large in 5, 10, 15 years if we don't hire juniors? One of the ways that we can look at this is through the lens of card games, primarily trading card games. I love Magic the Gathering, so please bear with me. I promise this has a point. In Magic, when you take a turn, usually you play a land, some kind of resource. These are essentially static resources that you can play to then play other cards. Having those static resources means I can play equipment or artifacts. It means that I can play other weaker types of creatures or spells or all different kinds of things. But ultimately, without my static resources, without my lands, without my mana, I can't do anything. In trading card games and really game design in general, this is sort of the concept of ramp. You start with few resources. Throughout your turns, you gain more resources, and then you can play more and more powerful cards as you go. Until eventually, in most games, you end up swinging out with your most powerful creatures and, in theory, doing the best you can to win the game. In good game design, that ramp is relatively slow, balanced, and helps everybody playing get to a good place so they can enjoy the game. Now, imagine there was some card, let's just call it AI, that gives everyone plus 100, plus 100. This card, even if you don't play Magic the Gathering, would be so obviously broken. It's way too powerful, and no mana ramp makes sense for this type of card. It's just broken. And this is the way that a lot of tech executives like to talk about AI. It's this hyper mega productivity tool that will make any senior or mid-level engineer 100x, and they can go and do the work of an entire team of engineers. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been working in AI for the better part of 2 years now, building these agentic flows, doing a bunch of these things, and yes, these things are extremely powerful productivity tools. So maybe in this hypothetical situation, I have the following configuration, where I have very few resources, just one land, not much ramp at all, and then I have my really powerful creature, and I can go out and do a big swing, all through the power of AI. AI is giving my super powerful creature all the swing, all the stuff. It's making it really, really hit hard. Now, anyone who's played Magic the Gathering knows that there are counterspells and that you can get rid of creatures and you can do all kinds of stuff to prevent your opponents from getting too powerful too quickly. So what happens when my super 10x engineer who's, 100x by the way of AI, all of a sudden decides to leave the company, and I'm left with very little ramp and these AI tools, but not really left with much else at all in the way of resources? Well, I'll tell you what happens. You lose the game. There's no way to claw back, especially in the late game, from a really poor ramp in your early game. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is how not having junior engineers in the industry could be completely catastrophic 5, 10, 15 years into the future if there's no ramp up for those people to become senior engineers or mid-level engineers. If we don't even hire junior engineers today, that means that the mid-level and senior and staff engineers of tomorrow don't have a pipeline. There's no way for those people to go and get the skills, to get the on-job training, which we all need, to then go and excel as leaders in the future. I really think that this is accentuated going into the future because really using AI tools in a lot of ways, especially at their worst with vibe coding and not really reading or looking over what your AI systems are doing, that's a lot of technical debt that you're taking on. And technical debt, much like a mortgage, you have to pay down into the future continuously. Just like a mortgage, you eventually have to pay that cost. And depending on how long you put it out into the future, that cost could be excruciatingly painful. I think it's worth calling that connection out again. With AI tools, we take on a lot of technical debt, especially with things like vibe coding. With a lot of technical debt, you have to pay that price in the future. Paying that price in the future without senior engineers, without staff engineers, without a pipeline of people that we can call leaders in the future, that will be extremely, extremely painful. It's not really a mystery to me that we don't talk about the AI technical debt. Any code practitioner out there, it's kind of immediately obvious that these things create a lot of technical debt, especially if you're moving really fast, doing things in kind of a quick and loose way. It just creates technical debt. But these tech executives, they're not going to talk about the impact that these tools could have going into the future because that doesn't sell. The fear sells with these AI tools. If you're not staying on top of it, if you're not catching up, if you're not utilizing these things today and using Claude Code to build your entire backend and everything, then that's not going to sell. Instead, they sell the fear of missing out. They sell the fear of not getting your product to market fast enough. I sort of foresee one of three things happening in the industry. One of them, probably the most likely. One is what tech executives and people selling these products, really selling them based on fear, what they would tell you is that everything is going to be vibe coded or at least agentic in some way. Everything is going to be built that way in the future. And software engineer jobs are going to become completely obsolete. Nobody's going to touch code into the future. It's all going to be agentic. We're going to use everything from these companies and their platforms going into the future. Now, that's like the maximalist viewpoint. There's also a minimalist viewpoint, and I think what a lot of people maybe would put in the like coping bubble, where they would say like, oh no, these tools are full of crap. They're not really productivity tools at all. They only cause pain and suffering. Now, again, I think anybody who's seriously used these tools and given them a real try today, because again, just even in the last year or maybe 6 months, have they gotten really good? That's immediately obviously not going to be true today because they do give a good productivity gain. Maybe we call that side total collapse, where junior engineers have to fill up that pipeline again, where we have to get people in there doing code again, kind of going back to the old way of doing things because the industry at large has just rejected everything. And the third one, I would say, is much more close in the middle. And I call this bifurcation. And this is where there's going to be a massive bifurcation of talent in the industry. There's going to be senior engineers who I would say really ultimately probably get the most benefit out of these tools anyways. If you're extremely versed in coding and you know how these systems work, you think from a high-level architectural standpoint, and you can also cut good code, then yes, you're going to get massive productivity gains from things like ChatGPT and agentic workflows and utilizing those as part of the tools in your tool belt. But then there's going to be this bifurcation of people who continue to vibe code, who don't truly understand these systems, and sort of fall behind. And there's going to be just this massive gap in the middle of people who can go and fix huge problems, like people who actually will go and do code, and maybe we still call them engineers, I don't know. And then the people on the other side in this huge gap where they're the ones using agentic flows, but as soon as something breaks, they have to go over the gap to those more senior people, to those senior engineers who have the capabilities and have the chops to actually go fix these things. They're going to go over those gaps to actually then cross the chasm of getting things fixed. So we have total collapse, we have the bifurcation in the middle, and then we have where everything just goes agentic all the time, which tech executives would love us to believe. I really believe it's going to be somewhere in the middle, as most things are. So where does that all leave our junior engineers? Where does that leave our raw resources, the people that make up the ramp of an engineering org? Seniors leave, staff engineers retire, people go to the management track, and there's sort of this continuous pipeline, or at least there was in the industry, this continuous pipeline of resources and ramp for engineering talent in engineering orgs. What happens to those people? I think it's a scary future, and I think it's worth thinking about. if you're an executive in an engineering org, I encourage you to think about your engineering pipelines for the next few years and what the hiring of those pipelines actually look like. If you see a huge gap between the most talented people doing a lot of the code, the most senior people, and them leaving, essentially creating a bus factor, then you need to think about bringing on engineering talent, junior engineering talent, to be mentored and trained and given the skills to be able to ramp up to that level so that you have the pipeline when people retire, when people inevitably leave, when people jump to the management track, because the AI supercard is not the one that's going to give you the ramp that you need for a sustainable engineering org for the foreseeable future.